What prompted me to write this book, Rethinking the Administrative Presidency, is that I've been trained from kind of a multidisciplinary perspective, from both the perspective of public management and the perspective of political science. We seldom think of the president in terms of a chief executive. That is their role in terms of being a CEO, essentially, and choosing the best management team possible in order to manage these administrative agencies effectively. What I've found is that political science tends to have a very top-down perspective in terms of the president's relationship to these agencies. Whereas in public management, we have a much more micro-level perspective of the relationships between managers and employees. Two strains of scholarship that were basically talking past one another when it came to issues having to do with bureaucratic politics. And what I wanted to do in this book was really bring the two together so that we could start a dialogue between two very complementary cognate disciplines that really hasn't existed to this point, at least satisfactorily. A very common problem within Washington, D.C. is really the relationship that develops between career bureaucrats and political appointees. On average, a career executive, for example, has a tenure within the federal government of about 18 years. Whereas the average tenure of a presidential appointee is under 2 years. In that short period of time, it's very difficult to establish good working relationships without being somewhat deferential to the people that you're working with, who represent that institution and will represent that institution after you go. A political appointee cannot just come into the organization and impose formal mechanisms of control and think that he or she is going to advance the president's prerogatives. These careerists are neither motivated to work without a clearer idea of how their work is connected to the overall mission of the organization, and two, it inhibits horizontal information sharing within the organization to avoid the common missteps of any type of policy implementation design, right? And so what I find is that those political executives, those presidential appointees who are willing to trust the career executives, the top career bureaucrats within their organization, are able to establish kind of a trickle-down trust within the organization. That is, when the middle managers within the organization see a good working relationship between the career executives and the political executives, we find better outcomes for presidential agendas as well as just kind of objective organizational performance within these agencies. And that's true not just of the agencies that may seem ideologically opposed to the president's agenda, but also for those agencies that are well aligned with the president's agenda as well. This book could be seen as both empirical and practical in terms of its contribution to the disciplines, but also its contribution to, or the potential to contribute advice to incoming presidential administrations. All of the conclusions in this book are essentially empirically based. They come from a theoretical foundation, but the findings from the book are derived from survey analysis, asking real people real questions, from interviews, asking real people real questions. The number one priority of any executive is to establish trust between the executive ranks and the rest of the organization in order to align informal aspects of the organization with the formal goals of the organization. Trust is what matters. And from there you can build that intellectual capital, that institutional power to see through your prerogatives as defined by the president, but seen through the lens of the agency itself and the culture that you establish.